All right, let's get into chapter 12. Chapter 12 is over stress and health. We're going to go over how stress impacts our health in all aspects, whether that's physically, biologically, emotionally, psychologically, socially, and how all those aspects also affect how we feel stress. Okay, so there are two psychological fields you can get into if your interests include the effect of stress on health. So, first we have behavioral medicine. This integrates medical, psychological, and sociocultural knowledge to increase life expectancy and enhance quality of life. So, it's taking those three aspects and taking knowledge from all three of those to increase your life expectancy, to increase your health. And then the second one is health psychology. This focuses on the development of strategies to eliminate or reduce the risk of illness and disease. So maybe that's learning coping mechanisms, maybe that's learning different ways of living that can help reduce the risk of illness and disease. And we'll get into how reducing our stress can positively impact our health. Okay, so what is stress? That's what we're going to get into. What is stress? Stress is the perceived discrepancy between the physical or psychological demands of a situation and the individual's biological, psychological, or social resources to cope with the demands. And I want you to know that some things that are stressful for some people are not stressful for others, or someone may feel it more or less stressful. Even if it's stressful for everyone you know, it may be more or less. So think of maybe public speaking. For some people, that's minimal to no stress. That's something they enjoy doing, they enjoy performing or whatever. They're going to feel minimal stress. But then other people, it is one of the most stressful things. They will not sleep for days. They'll have a hard time eating. Their knees will get shaky, their hands will get clammy. It just depends on the person. And then stressors, stress is caused by stressors. Stressors are the experiences we encounter in life that cause stress. These are events we perceive as threatening or challenging, that we feel like we don't have what it takes within us, whether our bodies physically can't do it, our bodies can't keep up, whether we psychologically cannot process it, or we just don't have the social resources, we don't have the people backing us up, we don't have the finances, we don't have the background, whatever it is, to confront this challenge and succeed. That's what stress is, and that's what stressors are. So there's two types of stress or stressors that we can feel. We have distress, which is the negative effects experienced when confronted with stress. When someone is in distress, you can usually tell that they are kind of in a little bit of a frenzy. And then we have eustress, which is positive effects that can result from stress, often in relation to positive yet stressful situations. So what are some situations that would bring about distress? Maybe you got into a car accident and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to financially recover from this. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe it just, maybe you're running late and you're afraid you're going to get yelled at work, or whatever it is. You lost your homework, or you forgot to take your test. So you're in distress because you just don't know what to do. You don't feel like you have the capability to overcome this, at least in the way you want to. And then there are some things that bring about the short-term buzzing, energizing feeling with something that's stressful, but in a positive way. So what are some events that bring about eustress? So maybe having a baby. That's something that's positive, but is stressful. Maybe moving, maybe you're excited to move, but it's still stressful. Getting married, it's so wonderful, but it can still be stressful. They bring about this positive, energizing feeling, but over time, it can still leave you just as exhausted as a distressful situation. What is there any events you can think about that could bring about both distress and eustress? There's one that came to mind as I was making these notes, and I was thinking about someone who is leaving a bad relationship, whether it's divorce or just breaking up. And so they feel this eustress, this relief, this positive, even though it's stressful, they're feeling this positivity about leaving a bad relationship. But they might be feeling distressed because they're like, I don't know how to live a single life anymore. Maybe I've been in this relationship for years, and I'm feeling distressed because I haven't lived on my own in a long time. I don't know how to navigate this, but I'm also feeling this eustress because it's a positively stressful thing. So there's definitely some give and take there. Think about maybe other situations that you could feel both. So kind of have a flow chart that leads to eustress and distress. So we have challenge stressors. So maybe things in your workplace, your workload, job complexity, job responsibility. And then based off of the individual and how they perceive these, do they have the ability to cope with the demands of whatever this brings about? If it's perceived as a challenge and you feel like you have the resources to cope with the stress, then you'll feel eustress. You'll have well-being. You'll feel committed to the job. You have a sense of identity in it. You perform well. You're engaged with it. Although if it's in excess, you'll still have some negative outcomes. But if you don't feel like you have what it takes to overcome, if it's perceived as a threat and you're unable to cope with the stress, you'll feel distress. You'll feel burned out at your job. You'll have physical symptoms. You might start to feel sick. You'll adapt counterproductive behaviors such as procrastinating, which a lot of us feel, and withdrawal behaviors. You'll start to want to distance yourself from the task or from your job because you just don't feel like you're up to it, and whatever you do is not going to be good enough. Okay, catastrophes. These are types of stressful situations, types of stressors. Catastrophes are unpredictable, large-scale stressful events, such as natural disasters, a hurricane or tornado, an earthquake, death of a loved one, major financial ruin, national emergency, like when 9/11 happened. That was a catastrophe. That was something that impacted the physiological, psychological, and social well-being of millions of Americans. Then significant life changes. These often come with eustress, but are still stressful, common life events. So such as maybe moving, getting married, having a baby, starting a new job, all good things, all good things, but they are significant life changes that bring about stress. And then lastly, are daily hassles, another type of stressor. These are frequent and common stressors experienced in daily life, such as, needing gas in the car, running late, you spilled your coffee on your clothes, so you need to go change your clothes, your dog maybe peed or pooped in your house and you gotta clean it up. Things like that it doesn't necessarily take one large catastrophic event to send you over the edge. It can be many daily hassle stressors, small stressors that add up to cause you to feel burned out, or the physical and psychological symptoms as a catastrophic event. You don't have to ever undergo a catastrophic event to have kind of a mental break when it comes to stress. Okay, so if we know that stress affects our health, we must know that it affects all and is caused by all aspects of our health, biologically, psychologically, and socially. So the biopsychosocial perspective says that this is the understanding of stress and health that includes biological, psychological, and social factors. So the biological factors could be your genetics, the genetic material passed down to you from your parents, how you're functioning, how your body functions, how your physical body functions. Can you get up and walk well? Can you digest food well? Things like that. And then epigenetics, that is how the environment affects the turning on or turning off of the genes that you received from your parents. Psychologically, this is intrapersonal, which is your relationship with yourself, and interpersonal, which is relationships with other people, cognition, emotion, and behavior. And then lastly, socially, this is your family structure, your social support, your socioeconomic status, pollution, natural disasters, really kind of your environment around you. All of these can affect your stress and can cause stress, and all of these can cause how you react to the stress, and it can affect your health. So we're going to talk about first your biological responses to stress. So first we've got the fight or flight response. And I'm sure most of you guys have heard of this response. This is a physiological response to stress triggered by the release of hormones from the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. So this is, maybe you feel like you're in danger, or you encounter a stressful situation, and your body goes into this fight or flight response where either you're going to work through it and you're going to fight it out and you're going to take care of it. So it's supposed to hone in on your ability to do that, or it's going to give you the ability to flee from whatever danger or stress it is. So can this be triggered when you're not in any danger or stress? Yes, it can be. And that is what panic or anxiety attacks are. Your body going into fight or flight mode when there's no current danger or stress. So that's what you're feeling. You're feeling whenever your body triggers this fight or flight response, you have an increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, your respiration, your breathing increases. So when you're feeling these things, you start to feel like almost like you can't breathe, because your body, without encountering any real danger, is acting as if it is encountering a danger. Okay, so what happens when your body is encountering stress for prolonged periods of time? So your body adapts to the presence of stress over prolonged periods of time. So your body does its best to adapt to a certain level of stress if it doesn't seem to lessen. Our bodies are resilient and can handle a lot. It can handle pretty much whatever we throw at it, but only for a certain amount of time. Our bodies can only handle so much. So the general adaptation syndrome is how the body responds to prolonged exposure to stress, and explains why it is so important to learn how to effectively cope with stress. So there's 3 stages that our body goes through when we encounter prolonged periods of stress. So first we've got the alarm stage. This is your fight or flight. This is the initial response to the stress. It's like alarm bells going off inside of your body, inside your brain. So you have increased levels of cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. These are hormones that help to hone in your body's ability to fight or flight, to attack head on or to flee. So it increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, decreases blood flow to the brain and to your internal organs, and increases blood flow to muscles, to your skeletal muscles, because that's what's going to help you flee or fight. It primes your body to do what it needs to do in the moment. Okay, so that's the alarm stage. That is anytime, you're feeling high stress or you're feeling danger, and that is a good thing. That is something that your body needs to be able to do, so it can protect itself. However, once we get into the resistance stage, that's when we start to see the effects of prolonged stress on our bodies and our minds. So if this stress remains, we have remained high heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and our hormones, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, continue flowing throughout our bodies, allowing the body to stay alert and primed for fight or flight. You may not outwardly seem stressed, people may not see it quite yet, but the body is depleting its resources and reserves, and the body can't fight any additional stressors, such as illness, such as another thing that may come up. You are really teetering a line during this resistance stage. And then the exhaustion stage can come about soon after. This is where you've depleted all of your resources. Your body just cannot handle it anymore. And reserves are also depleted. You're exhausted physically and mentally, and this can cause damage to internal organs. Your body is more vulnerable to illnesses and even death. So it is so important to learn how to effectively cope with stress. Okay, so next is responses to stress psychologically. We might feel worry and anxiety. We are more susceptible to forming psychological disorders. The more prolonged stress we feel, the more likely we are to forming psychological disorders such as OCD, anxiety, depression, things like that. We're more likely to feel irritable and angry towards others for no reason. Not because of something that they did, but because we are having a hard time coping with anything. We're more likely to feel inward sadness and depression. Differing coping abilities. So some people feel they have more control over what happens than others. And so those that feel like they have more control are more likely to be able to cope with the stress. And those that feel like they don't have any control over what happens to them or the situation are going to feel less capable to cope with the stress. And some people use things to help them cope with stress, such as eating, alcohol, smoking, drugs, things like that, that, you know, eating some ice cream every now and then when you're feeling stressed is not going to hurt you. Drinking, a couple of beers or whatever whenever you are feeling stressed every now and then is not going to hurt you. But when it becomes a crutch, and I'm not saying to do those things, you need to learn other ways to cope with what you're going through. But just because, doing it once or doing it twice is not necessarily going to hurt you, it can start a vicious cycle of, okay, this makes me feel good, so I'm going to keep doing it because I know this is a tried and true way to make me feel better. And that's how those things start. It's almost never intentional. No one decides they want to become addicted to food or addicted to drugs and alcohol as a way to make them feel better. But some people, that's all that they feel they can do to feel better. So that's what they cling on to. Okay, so how does stress play a role in health and disease? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but we're going to get into a specific field, which is called psychoneuroimmunology. This is the interaction of psychological, neurological, the endocrine system, and immunological processes in stress and illness. So under stressful situations, the immune system is less able to protect and heal the body. Cortisol and the sympathetic nervous system play a role in this. So we just talked about during, fight or flight, there's an increased release of the hormone cortisol. And this is also caused by an increase in sympathetic nervous system activation. That is what triggers the fight or flight. That is what that is what is responsible for the fight or flight. Then after the fight or flight is over, our parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and brings everything back down to normal. But if we have constant increased cortisol and increased sympathetic nervous system activation, that prolonged decreased blood flow to the brain and the gut, like I just talked about, that occurs, and that can lead to immunological delayed responses. So your body is not going to be able to protect itself because it doesn't have any blood flow, doesn't have any nutrients being brought to it, doesn't have the oxygen, doesn't have the nutrients being brought to it. And if we're talking about also our neurological ability to fight things off, to fight thoughts and thoughts of anxiety and depression and obsession and things like that. If our brain is not receiving enough blood flow, especially for prolonged periods of time, our capacity for our brain to function properly is going to be greatly decreased. So it's so important to learn how to effectively cope with stress. So how are some ways that we manage our stress? One way is through biofeedback. This is stress management therapy that requires participants to monitor and adjust their own physiological states. So it's someone that maybe keeps a close eye on their blood pressure, their heart rate, or their muscle tension. And by becoming aware of those things, they can then engage in activities that decrease those, that decrease your blood pressure, that decrease your heart rate, that eases your muscle tension. Then there's neurofeedback. This is a stress management technique that focuses on specifically training individuals to control their own brain activity, such as, racing thoughts and things like that. And so that can be tracked through using an EEG or a functional MRI. That's an fMRI. They can also use relaxation therapy. This is a group of techniques aimed at helping relax the body and the mind, such as progressive muscle relaxation and guided imagery. Progressive muscle relaxation is you kind of follow whether it's a video or someone's voice, and you're laying on the ground. All of a sudden, you tense all of your muscles at once, and then someone's like, "Okay, now release from your head. Release the muscles from your head." Okay, then your shoulders, then your arms, then your hands, and it goes throughout your whole body, and slowly but surely you release the tension in all your muscles. Progressive muscle relaxation, and it really helps your whole body relax. I've done it in one of my classes before, I think in one of my sports psychology classes, and I realized, that helps you be mindful of each and every muscle group in your body and helps you to relax every single one of them. Okay, meditation. Meditation is stress management strategy that involves training the mind to become present, aware, and open to experiences. This can help us become more resilient to stress, so that stress is not as stressful to us, that stressors don't influence or impact us as much. One type of meditation is mindfulness-based stress reduction. This is based on the principles of meditation and mindfulness. Next, aerobic exercise. This is something that you can do to help your body and your mind be more resilient to stress. This is sustained exercise that increases heart and lung fitness. Oh, and don't worry about this. I didn't mean to include this. I had copied and pasted so I can keep the same formatting, and I accidentally left that on. So don't worry about that. Okay, so those were the biological, physiological ways that you can manage stress. This is more of the psychological ways in which you can manage stress. And the first one is through something called perceived control. This is the extent to which an individual believes they are in control of a situation. The more control you feel like you have over a situation, the more likely you're going to be motivated to do something about it. If you're motivated to do something about it, you are going to work hard to work through it, and you're more than likely going to get past it. However, if you feel like you don't have any control of your situation, why on earth would you feel motivated to do anything about it? If that's just going to be a waste of your time and resources, why on earth would you take the time and the energy and the resources to try to fix something or try to confront something if you feel like no matter what you do, nothing is going to make it better? So the more perceived control you have, the more likely you are to face that stressor and conquer it. And so that's why it's so important for people to feel like they have at least an iota of control over their lives, over their situation, because if they don't, then it's kind of helplessness. It's called learned helplessness. That you're not going to feel capable of coping with anything or conquering anything. And then next is someone's explanatory style. And I talk about this in social psychology. There's many different types of explanatory styles, but you can kind of reduce it to, do I blame things on myself? Do I blame my situation on myself? And that's something that I can control or not control? Or when things don't go my way, do I blame it on someone else? Do I blame it on things that I don't understand? It's like things that are outside of my control. So how do you explain the things that happen in your life, and approach people use to explain how or why events occur. And so that kind of links to perceived control. Is it something within me that is causing this, and therefore it's something I can fix? Or is it something that I'm going to put the blame on someone else? And if it's someone else's fault, then it's nothing I can do. So it's not up to me, it's up to someone else, or up to the environment to change. Okay, coping strategies. These are psychological methods used to reduce or minimize stress. Help us to reduce the impact of stressors. So one type of coping strategy we can use is called cognitive appraisal. This is cognitive interpretation and evaluation of a stressor, and it's broken down into two stages. First, we've got our primary appraisal. This is the initial evaluation of the seriousness of the stressor and the demands it will require. So you're going to ask yourself, how much control do I have over this stressful situation? And can I change anything about this situation? And then you're going to go on to the secondary appraisal. This is the reassessment of a stressful situation that focuses on the resources and actions needed to overcome the stressor. So you're going to ask yourself, what actions can I take and what resources do I need to overcome the stressor? And this evaluation helps you cognitively process the who, what, when, where, and why to overcoming a stressful situation. Another way we can cope is through problem-focused coping. This is an attempt to alleviate stress directly by eliminating the source of a stressor or by changing the behaviors that occur during the stressful situation. So you're focusing on the problem itself. You're focusing on attacking the problem and taking care of it so it's not a problem anymore. So that stressor is out of your life until maybe the next time it comes back up. So you are focusing on the problem. And that can work sometimes, but also another form of coping is emotion-focused coping. And this is just as important as taking care of the problem. This is influencing one's own emotional response to a stressful situation as a method of coping. This is taking care of, okay, how do I confront this? How emotionally? Do I let it freak me out? Do I shut down? Do I become distressed? Do I, act like everything is a catastrophe? Do I feel helpless? Well, if I can rewrite how I emotionally respond to something, it will then help with my problem solving. It'll help me be more resilient to the stress I encounter. Doesn't matter if I can take care of the problem or not, if emotionally I can't handle it. So both are so important. Knowing how to conquer a stressor and also how to respond emotionally to a stressor. They're both very, very important. Okay, and then lastly are our social means of responding to stress or coping with stress. Social support. This is the comfort, caring, and help available to an individual experiencing stress from a network of supported friends and family members. So if you feel like you've got a good support system, well, then you're going to feel much more capable of handling much more than people that don't have a solid support system. That's why it's really hard for people to move away from home and to move away from their friends and family, because they're leaving at least their physical support system. They might still have some, they're still available over the phone or over, Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but having them right there helps too. But there's been some research done that shows that even people that simply have a higher number of Facebook friends, they feel like they've got a higher level of social support than people that don't. So it's even just the awareness that you have connections to people that you believe might be willing to lend a helping hand at some point helps you feel that you have more support. And then lastly is the faith factor. People who are religiously active live longer compared to those who are not religiously active. So that can tie into social support, but it also overall religious involvement increases your social support because you have more connections with people. You are bonded over your shared belief system, and your church family or whatever wherever you meet for your religious gathering, you all have that shared belief, and you all kind of rely on each other. You experience more positive emotions overall. People who are involved in religious gatherings. And then also religion tends to encourage people to engage in healthier lifestyle behavior. So you're less likely to overindulge in alcohol, in smoking, in drugs, and unsafe sexual behavior. And so all of that leads to better psychological and physical health. Okay, that is the end of chapter 12, stress and health.